Nothingness is both like nothing and everything all at once. It's this sort of like metaphysical property, and like the deeper you dive into it, the more vast you realize that it is.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Alex Walstad, and I play guitar in Nothingness.
Hey, and my name is Clay, and I'm the vocalist of Nothingness.
And guys, how would you describe Nothingness? What kind of music do you make, would you say?
We just call it death metal to keep it easy.
The more complicated version of that is cauldronous death metal.
Yes, also that. Yeah, it's just whatever we feel like kind of thing through like a death metal lens, basically, is how we look at it.
So did you say cauldronous death metal?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our fun little sort of inside joke where we melt down a bunch of different metals in a big old cauldron. So like black metal, death metal, doom metal, all that just sort of gets melted down into this little cauldron, filtered through that like death metal lens. And so we try not to, put too much emphasis on strictly what genre we are. We're just a death metal band that can take influences from all sorts of places. And so we call it cauldronous death metal.
So without getting too deep into genres like death metal, black metal, or whatnot, would you guys say that you're predominantly fast, or you skew to, or you include a lot of atmosphere in your music or anything like that?
I feel like we're kind of like predominantly sort of like hanging around like a middle pace, but we jump up and we jump down. But yeah, it's all kind of like, I almost hate to use the word mid-pace, but kind of, and we shoot faster sometimes or shoot slower. But yeah, it sort of just jumps around, hanging out a lot in the middle ground. And as far as like atmosphere goes, I guess like I've heard people like kind of say like our songs have like a specific kind of atmosphere to them, but like during the writing process, there isn't really any like forethought.
Yeah, like there's no real like conscious effort to conjure a specific atmosphere.
So whatever like atmosphere is conjured just kind of like happens sort of on accident, I guess. We don't ever like add any extra stuff. It's really, for the most part, it's just two guitars, a bass, drums, and vocals.
Let's talk a little bit about how Nothingness came together. The two of you started the band, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I'm not mistaken, Nothingness, including your drummer, you guys have a recording lineup and you also have a live lineup. But those two aren't necessarily the same thing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for the first record, basically like I had, some ideas, and Clay and I kind of sort of like started to get together every week and just like hype each other up and like get all stoked about making, whatever this thing was we were making. We didn't even have a name for it at the time. It went through a few different names, and then it just all kind of came together. The record sort of finished itself basically. And then Clay had a buddy, Jason Hurt, who played drums on both our records. And he was down to basically just be like kind of like a session musician almost and record the drums for us. So I worked with him to get them all tight and, playing the way that I had them programmed. And then he kind of decided that he liked it and joined the band and became a live member as well. But over the last year, he's gotten a lot busier with other projects. So he recorded the drums for this second record, but we have a new drummer for live shows now. His name's Eric Christensen, and he's in another band with me called Aberration. He rules. He's the blast captain. But yeah, otherwise, like for the recordings, I just kind of, it's easier for me to record all the instruments just because I don't have to teach them to everyone else right away. It's more out of laziness than it is out of anything else. Like I know all the stuff, so I'd rather just record it all myself and then worry about teaching it to the dudes when we play it live.
Gotcha. Let's backtrack a little bit. Clay, how did you meet Alex? And how did you guys decide to start working together?
Well, this is a fun story. Al and I are essentially cousins. And so we've known each other our entire lives. And I've been trying to get, or like back in the day, I had been trying to get Al to like settle down and like focus on a musical project, because I always knew like he had riffs and he was good at music and whatnot. And, life carried us in different directions for the first, 26 years or whatever. And then eventually, like in late 2018, we just reconnected. And I shared, I was like, hey, I'm into some of these bands. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm into some of those same bands. A lot of, Black Death and Doom stuff. And then we were like, well, holy shit, wait, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Unless your parents are going to listen to this, and then, I would advise against it.
But no, so we like reconnected and we just sort of like hit it off again in adulthood after finding, all these different underground death metal acts and stuff. And so we started like writing together, and I implemented, that like weekly schedule. I was like, all right, let's just work on this every week. And we did for like 6 months. We got together weekly for like 6 months, just like hammering out ideas of like what exactly we wanted it to be. We were like, all right, let's pick a name, pick a concept, pick a this, that, and the other thing. Like finally got that all done in, like late 2018, early 2019. And so it's something that like sort of just happened really naturally, where me and Al have known each other for a long time, finally reconnected. And then we were like, just hit it off with this like, idea of Nothingness. And then, added Jason. And then we got Zen and John on board early in the process. And they've been the only other guitar and bass player in the band this whole time. So
you said you picked a name, picked a concept. Did you guys already have this idea of cauldronous death metal at that time?
No, that evolved naturally, that like the term cauldronous death metal. But we did, like Nothingness. Part of the idea is that Nothingness is a blank canvas upon which anything or everything could be painted. So like Nothingness is the starting point from which we then branch out and bring in all sorts of whatever we want to write. So it's like purposely not limiting.
Yeah.
So would Nothingness be the overarching concept to all your music?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's where I write from. Like both Al and I, he writes all the music. And so he goes into the crypt and writes stuff, and then he emerges and then shows it to me. And then I meet it with my own sort of like creative forces, where I sit down and get into like what he wrote, and then try and find the themes and the lyrics inside of the song itself, And that's kind of just how our progress works. And so, like I'm working from a place of like pulling stuff out of the nothing, but I can't speak to Al's creative process as far as like how he views Nothingness.
Well, first off, I would like to say the crypt is my mom's basement, which is pretty dope.
And Alex, we'll speak to you a little bit more about how songs come together for you. I would like to explore this idea of Nothingness just a little bit, Clay. Well, first of all, what does the term mean to you? What is Nothingness?
Yeah, that's a good question. I already started with Nothingness is the beginning of everything. It's a point, like it's, now you got me philosophizing. It's just Nothingness is both like nothing and everything all at once. It's this sort of like metaphysical property. And like the deeper you dive into it, the more vast you realize that it is. It's sort of like the Nietzschean stare into the void and the void stares back sort of thing. So it's this infinitely dense yet vast and empty place from which we then summon the metal out of.
And would you say Nothingness is a condition or a state that applies to everything? Does everything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'll go for it.
So, I mean, sorry, the ending of Supraliminal is a song called Decimation Mechanism. And it's just sort of like time on an exponential curve from like the beginning where there was nothing, humanity and stuff happens, climate change collapses it, and then all of a sudden the whole world ends in another big bang heat death of the universe. So like Nothingness is both the beginning and the end and a constant throughout.
So you mentioned Nietzsche, but it also sounds like the nothingness that you're talking about is almost the scientific principle of nothingness and where we come from.
I am not a good science guy.
Okay. But it seems like it's a subject that interests you.
Yeah, I mean, I just picked up Jean-Paul Sartre's Being in Nothingness the other day because it's a book I've always meant to read, but I just haven't. And now I have it, and it's, 10,000 pages long or whatever it is. It's just a massive book. So, I mean, like, yeah, the concept of nothingness is big and dense, and I'm still discovering it in real time alongside, the band that we're in. So these two things, like this sort of abstract metaphysical concept is being explored in real time by our music and our lyrics, and like, from album to album.
And as far as the actual songs go, Alex, do they always start with you? And do they always start with a riff?
Yeah. It kind of always just like, I guess I just get into the right headspace, which for me usually involves a good amount of drugs. And then I just pick up my guitar.
What's a good amount of drugs?
Like 400 to 1200 milligrams of THC. And then, when I was writing N2, it was like a lot of beer. So I was really drunk and taking acid and stuff. So a good combination of those three things. And then I just press record on Reaper and play guitar. And sometimes a whole song comes out. Sometimes it's just a riff. And then I just kind of fiddle with it and expand on it and send versions of it to the dudes until I feel like I've got one, or we all feel like we've got one that's like the song, basically. A few of our songs I got lucky, and like none of this stuff, like I'm not like I'm gonna write this type of song, or like I'm gonna have the song sound like this. Like I just get lucky, basically. And some of the songs I got really lucky and finished in just like one sat down, hit record, played guitar, and it just came out. And that's kind of how I want to keep the creative process for most of the stuff I'm involved with, just because it feels like more natural. And I guess like sounds maybe a little bit like I'm huffing my own farts, but like real, I guess, because I'm not thinking about anything while I'm making it. I'm not trying to do anything. So whatever's in my head is what comes out.
How complete are the demos that you're sending to the rest of the band?
What do you think, Clay? I think
they could be released.
Some of them probably could be released. Like I get them as done as I possibly can with my own ears and the tools I have at my disposal. But I mean, it still sounds like programmed drums and stuff. But yeah, it's lacking the polish of mix and master sometimes,
a little bit maybe. But like, it's a good guitar tone, good drum tone. Like everything is a completed blueprint. Yeah, just has that robotic feel that then we bring it to previously Jason and now Eric, and then they interpret it a little bit their own way. Where Al gives them the drums, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this is cool, but I'm going to do this type of fill," or something like that. Where they're like, "Ooh, I'm actually going to do this kind of snare accent." Right. So then they bring just a little bit of extra flavor.
Yeah.
So it's like 90% done by the time we get the final tracks.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But for all intents and purposes, the Reaper demos are the completed song structures as we hear them on the albums.
Yeah. Yep. They're final.
Yeah, we just try to hammer them out like to the point where they're as done as we can get them, so we get like a full idea of how the song's going to sound, and if we want to change anything or if any drum parts aren't working. That's mostly going through is just like how the drum parts work with the guitar parts and how everything flows as a song. I wasn't as concerned about things feeling like a song on the first record as I was just about it like working, I guess. But for the second record, I definitely tried harder to have things like be a song and not just like a stack of riffs.
And how do you prevent a song from just being a stack of riffs? Because you kind of write in a flow state, right?
Yeah. So sometimes like I said, I just get lucky and it comes out where my brain was just like, oh, this is the perfect time to repeat this riff, or this is the perfect time to bring this little thing from earlier in the song back, but like a low tremolo version or stuff like that. But sometimes, it'll be a mountain of riffs and it's just like, okay, this one maybe needs to repeat again, and these two riffs work as a cool sort of bridge for the riffs to A-B with each other. It's a lot of like, I'm not what I would call a good songwriter. So I just kind of fall back on like pop structure where it's like, if you A-B two really cool riffs, you can kind of turn that into a song.
Yeah, I think partially from my perspective, watching it on the outside, it's just like trial and error that eventually just like keeps getting better.
Yeah.
It's like sort of just like a natural leveling up by doing.
Yeah, basically it's just a lot of like recording myself playing guitar and programming drums to whatever I played, and just kind of getting better at like knowing what to do next, what to change, maybe like slow a part down, maybe make the drums a little sparser in certain spots so that it feels like a kind of a build up. I feel like a lot of our music is based on kind of like build up, breakdowns and build ups, and a lot of like tension building and releasing type stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, it's that, but on steroids.
Yeah.
talk about this new album. Would you mind saying the title for it?
Yeah, Supraliminal.
It's Supraliminal.
There we go.
Supraliminal. And what does that refer to? What does that mean?
It's got
A few different. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Clay.
okay, yeah, it's got a couple different meanings. The first is like the literal existing above a threshold, super meaning above and liminal meaning a threshold. But it also means like adequate enough to evoke a response or induce a sensation. And so that's kind of what we were hoping to do is, evoke a response from people, like by putting this record out that we just, dumped a shitload of time, energy, and, riffs. It's fast, it's slow, it's all over the place. It's like this big, meaty hunk of thing. And we're hoping that people are like, oh, wow, interesting, evoke a response. But then it gets a lot deeper with that, with how it ties into the nothingness concept in general, where existing above a threshold of consciousness, a large portion of this album is about dealing with trauma and doing drugs, and then what you've discovered on the other side of like why your trauma is, how you're dealing with it, and then using drugs either to dull that sensation or catapult yourself so deep into it that you understand things and from a new perspective. So like launching yourself above a threshold of consciousness to explore more of what's deep down inside.
And this will be your second album,
Mm-hmm.
which will be released on the 20th of January through Everlasting Spew Records. You mentioned you dumped a lot of time into this album. When did you guys actually start working on this?
2019.
Yeah, I started writing the songs for this one like before the first one even came out. We finished the first record and kind of started the recording process and whatnot. And I was just like super stoked to, my whole goal with this was just, I just wanted to play the music I wrote in front of a crowd, basically. Like that was my end goal. And so I was just really stoked to like have a band and was kind of riding that high, and I still am. But yeah, I basically just started squirting out tunes, pretty soon after we started getting the first one ready to record.
Yeah. And then what ended up happening is we had the COVID restrictions took a big toll on our band because we'd only been active for about 6 months before everything shut down. And then we kind of retreated for most of 2020 and just sort of kept working through certain aspects of how we were going to keep going. And that's like a lot of the lyrical themes for this. It's not, a quarantine record at all. And I don't want any of that like attached to it. But during that time of like just sitting on this mostly completed album, by the time like, because we finished recording this thing almost a year ago, but like through most of like late 2020, early 2021, the riffs and stuff were done. And so it was a lot of just like sitting with this thing, trying to figure out and like how to get the art just right, how to get everything attached to it just right. And, we commissioned a number of different artworks that we ended up not using. And so we did jump a lot of time into like the things that surround the music itself and to try and like distill the message a little bit more. Just like you asked me, what does nothingness mean? And I still haven't gotten a good answer for that. But yeah, we needed to distill the message and the art and everything around it down. And so, yeah, the music's been largely done for over a year and a half, probably.
Yeah, a year and a half. I think the last song on the record, Decimation Mechanism, I wrote like 2 months before we were going to go record, and I was like, okay, we're at this motherfucker.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything else was done. Yeah, mid.
But we also we discovered Beacon of Loss late too. That was a song that wasn't on the first cut of the record.
Yeah, that I was just kind of working on, like just sort of like free of a idea of putting it into any specific project. I was just kind of making a song, but it wound up kind of evolving into something that I felt was like a good fit for Nothingness, and it kind of a good fit for the record too, because it comes in towards the later end and just kind of like fully mixes things up for me, at least.
Yeah, it's a big like emotional, almost doomy, like funeral doom in its feeling, which is quite a bit different from a lot of what surrounds it. But yeah, that was one that
Might not get flow as like some funeral doom, but it definitely, it had a sort of feel to this.
Al will, during the deepest parts of his writing process, we've got a shared Dropbox folder and he'll upload stuff a lot. And so, I mean, most of N3 is already written too, where there's just riffs upon riffs upon riffs. And then, part of what us as the bandmates that don't write the music do is try and parse all of these ideas, parse all this information. And Beacon of Loss just sort of got buried in the Dropbox for a while. And I had heard it and I was like, man, that's a good tune, but not sure, if it's going to fit the record. And then 6-8 months afterwards, I listened to it again after the first cut of the record was up. And I was like, wait a minute, this really should be on there. And so I'd texted Al and I was like, dude, we should revisit Beacon of Loss. And then he's like, you know what? That's a good idea. And then we did. Now it's on the record.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who haven't heard the album yet, why were you unsure of Beacon of Loss being a part of Nothingness? Was it too doomy for what you guys feel Nothingness is?
I want to try to keep it as much of a surprise as possible, but I guess the shorthand would be it utilizes a lot more melody, and
it's our longest song by
a long song that kind of plays off the same sort of melodic motifs the whole time, and they just kind of twist around. It's definitely a Nothingness song, but I would say it's just our most melodic by a mile, and that was kind of what was making me think would this fit with the rest of the record has melody and whatnot, but just different kinds, I guess. I would just say Beacon of Loss has a different kind of melody for us.
And besides the melody and some of the funeral doom aspects on the album, what would you say the biggest difference is between Supraliminal and your first album?
Well, I think the first and biggest thing is just experience, really. With that first album, when we first started the band, both me and Al were going to play guitar in it. That was kind of the idea. And then I was like, hey, and I had never done vocals in a band before. And I was like, hey, what do you think of these for some backup vocals? And he was like, I don't know, I'd maybe use those as main vocals. And so I'd only been practicing vocals for about 6 to 8 months, somewhere in there, before we recorded the first record. So it was just really new and really a fresh concept for me at all. And so now listening back to the first record, I listen to it and I just find it very quaint, where I'm like, oh, that's a very inexperienced, performance by an inexperienced person. So there's that sort of aspect to it. So I think one thing is, we're just a lot more experienced in our trade. Just like I was saying, he's a better songwriter now, just for having written so many songs between N1 and N2, songs for other bands like Aberration, songs for Nothingness that didn't get used or are getting used on another record. Just all of that sort of experience ends up kind of shining through, I think. I think it feels like a more, well thought out, well put together, well structured record.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest difference between the two records is this one is a bit more, maybe a lot more cohesive than the first record. The first record was pretty raw in terms of
we just hammered that shit out in 6 months. We were like, this is awesome. This is awesome. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Put it on there, record it, done.
Yeah. And this one's still definitely the same sort of core, just whatever's in here comes out, but probably more refined. And I guess, I think we leaned into some black metal a little bit more often on this one too.
Mm-hmm.
This one's probably blastier, more blast beats on this one by a mile. A little bit less doom. It's still in there, but probably less doom, more blast beats, more black metal, and it's louder. That's about it.
Yeah,
it's way louder.
Yeah. When we went to the studio, we had notes for Adam, the engineer / producer man, and we were like, hey, we want the snare to sound like a shotgun in a air hanger, and just came in with all these sort of production notes on how big and boisterous and in your face we wanted the production to be, which is part of the Supraliminal sort of thing, where it's just to a vocal response. We were like, all right, let's just make this album loud and dense, and the bass tone, we put a big old distortion pedal on it, and so the bass is just like this grimy, distorted bass the whole time. We had a pretty clean bass tone in the first record.
Yeah, it's a plastic black pedal.
Dane Electro Black Coffee.
It's like a $20 pedal that's just a plastic piece of junk, and it sounds freaking disgusting. It rules.
So yeah, it's a more confident record in that regard, where we went in knowing what we wanted it to sound like a little bit more, being more confident in the songwriting, being more confident in the vocals, being more confident in, being willing to, get into the studio and experiment with some of those. There's a number of extra things on this record that aren't on the first one, that like the vibra slap was already showed off in Violet Viscera, and we got some other songs though, like the Anvil and Decimation Mechanism, that feature some synths and some anvil sounds. So we did like spice this one up too.
Yeah, that's kind of something like the first record we went in, and at least I was just like, super excited and just like brain going 100 miles an hour, like, holy fuck, I'm in a studio recording music, like this is crazy. And then it was over. It just like blink of an eye, done. But this time around, we had more experience like recording shit in a studio. So like we were able to kind of like sink in more, and like, do we want to add this? Do we want to, do something different here? You can kind of calm down and like think more about shit, which has definitely helped for sure.
So you mentioned Adam Tucker, who recorded, mixed, and mastered the album. Why Adam?
So with the first record, we were really big fans of this band that was just starting out in Minneapolis called Void Rot. Still like our best buddies. They all rule.
Great band.
Yeah, Void Rot. Those guys are the best. Great band, great dudes. Shout out Papa John and Will and Kent and frickin' Craig. They're all awesome.
Kentucky Craig, baby.
Kentucky Craig. But yeah, we were just really big fans of Void Rot, and I was like, this is their sound is great. They're doing Death Doom and it sounds freaking sweet. So where did they record? Oh, they recorded with Adam Tucker at Signature Tones. We were like, done. Didn't even think anything No more thought at all.
I would say we googled signature tone, looked at their website, and we were like, oh, yep, nope, this dude's legit as hell.
Yeah, so then I just started talking to Adam and sending him over the demos I had, and he was like, oh, yeah, this is great. Come on down and record. Let us know. His prices are fair as hell. And he's just a cool dude who like is really into heavy and weird music. And we're lucky as hell to have somebody like him that close to us. So yeah, we were just stoked to be able to work with a dude who was stoked on what we were doing and knew what he was doing. And we knew like what he was capable of.
Yeah. So when it came time to record N2, it was a no brainer.
Yeah. We're never, ever going to record with somebody else. I don't care if we've all had this conversation already. Like, even if we move, which will probably never happen, but let's say we move to frickin' Canada or something, we're still going to come to Minneapolis to record our record with Adam at Signature Tone, period. Like, he's
a mastermind and like a madman. Like,
he's a little studio goblin. He's just always scowling around.
Yeah, him running around his studio being like, ooh, what if we plug this into this and plug this into that? And yeah, and on this record, we did do a couple different things where Al was running his 6505 into the orange cab, which is what the live rig is. But then he also had a PV Bandit hooked up, which is just like a $200 solid state. Like, we were doing a lot of like fucking around. Like, Adam like knew our sound from the first record. And so when we decided to do the second one, like, he pulled out all the stops and he's like, oh, now I want to try out all these weird, gross things. And we're like, weird, gross? Hell yeah. Sign us up.
Yeah, he knows what we're trying to do. He knows what we're capable of. And he works to like just hone that and like harness it. I like the way he records and produces things is really like he mostly leaves it alone.
Yeah, it's hands off, but he pokes holes when he needs to. It's very intuitive.
He says, like, if basically he won't make your band sound any different. So if you go to record at his studio, you're not going to, turn from some not so great sounding stuff into something crazy, or vice versa. He just knows what about your sound is cool and like dials that up and just harnesses it. And he just does a great job figuring out your strong suits and kind of like leaning into those things.
We should mention you guys had a few friends come over and contribute to the album. You mentioned the Vibra Slap. Do you want to say who else is on here?
Yeah, so our guitarist, John Grandel, we all call him Jubji. He smacked the Vibra Slap because he had to. Jubji had to hit the Vibra Slap. And then we had our buddy Josh Rakin from Suffering Hour come down to lay down some guitar solo. He did the solo and Catapulted, and he did some cool wheedly deedly noisy stuff at the end of Violet Viscera. And then we also had Dylan from Suffering Hour lay down some backing vocals on
the first and last track.
First and last song, yeah.
So he comes in the first song and doubles up some vocals with me to sort of make the biggest, doomiest part of that thing just huge. And then, yeah, in the last song, he comes in and he's got his own section. Like, I'm excited for people to hear that last track because, it's the end of the record and we kind of went full send on it. And we were like, we told Dylan, he doesn't even have any lyrics or anything. We were just like, listen, man, here's the part. Go in there and go do full send sounds. And he's like, got it.
Yeah. And he just laid it down. Yeah. Dylan and Josh, obviously Suffering Hour is one of the best metal bands on the planet, in my opinion. And being able to bounce ideas off of those guys and like, hey, is this cool? What do you think about this song? I remember sending Beacon of Loss to Josh when we were thinking about including it on the record. Like, what do you think about this, man? I don't know how I feel about including this. And he was, let me know what he thought and thinks it's cool and whatnot. And it's just, they become good buddies that we kind of can bounce ideas off of too. And like figure out, is this good? Is it not good? Oh, they like it. Sweet. It's probably good.
Yeah. So yeah, we were real lucky that we just called them up like, hey, you want to come? Then they just hung out in the studio with us the day that they came.
Yeah. So at that point, they were obviously pretty good buddies. I'm in a band with Dylan now, Aberration, and we'd hung out with them before that. But yeah, being able to just have those dudes want to work on your record is pretty fucking crazy for me.
As far as Josh's solo, did you go into the studio knowing that you wanted him to contribute something, or was it just a happy accident?
Yeah, so he and Dylan came down knowing that, Dylan was going to do a couple vocal spots here and there. He didn't know where they were or what he was going to do. And Josh knew he was going to do a guitar solo or two. Also didn't really know where or what he was going to do. So that solo that he wrote on Catapulted, he just picked up his guitar. We played that part. We were like, this would be a pretty cool spot to throw a solo in. And he just started playing, and within a few minutes had a solo written. There was a drill gun across the studio that I saw that I was like, it'd be pretty cool if we could record this thing and put it on the record. And so he played his solo, did a dive bomb. I held the drill gun up to the pickup on his guitar, and that was that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So the album will be out a few weeks after people hear this interview. What do you guys have planned for after that?
We're going to try to hit the shows hard. We're going to try to play in as many places as we can. We got, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about it yet. I mean, I guess it probably doesn't matter, but we're working on getting a European tour set up with Clay Olson right now for sometime next year.
It'd be this year.
I guess it'd be 2023.
So late summer, fall. We're working with Everlasting Spew, Tito and stuff, and he's working on getting us over to Europe for trying to do a 2-week run over there. But then, directly after this, we'll be booking a CD release show here locally in Minneapolis. And then, trying to just over the summer and whatnot, get out and hit as many shows and as spots stateside as we can, where, if we can do a legit couple week tour, we'll take it if that opportunity comes. Otherwise, we'll just book our own, little 3-day weekend runs and whatnot.
Yeah, we're not above just doing our own DIY shit. We got buddy bands just like, hey, you guys want to do a run to wherever the fuck, get some good food, hang out, do a 3, 4, 5-day thing. We'll probably do some of those. N3, like Clay said, is already a pretty good chunk into the writing process. So
yeah, we hit our stride again after COVID, finished up N2, in a really strong sort of fashion, real confident and whatnot, and then just rolled right into N3. So now we've got a good portion of songs that might have been on N2 that we ended up being let's just save it for N3. And I've got lyrics and some the concepts are already in place for N3. So we'll hopefully not take 3.5 years between releases this next time.
Yeah, as long as the world doesn't shut down for 2 years, we should be good.
Do you want to give an inkling as to what people can expect from N3?
We've been sitting on our best riffs and our best songs for almost no reason, but because I kind of I want them to be absolutely perfect. So N3, I guess, expect in some ways more of the same, but in other ways, we're just diving into more sort of different things you can do within this box. It's a death metal record, but we kind of fuck around with that in new ways that we haven't done N2 or N1 yet. But yeah, I think we definitely have our best riffs are on some of these new songs that we're going to be working on N3 for sure. And
then thematically, N2 is largely a look inward, and N3 is then a look outward, is sort of the baseline of it. So N2, looking inside, dealing with trauma in sort of a metaphysical sense. And then N3 has been a lot of looking outward and being all right, what bugs me about everything that's around us? And sort of channeling a little bit of sort of negativity, but then also our records do have quite a bit of a positive spin in a lot of nuance to it. So it's sort of more of a looking outwards and being oh man, this bugs the shit out of me, but here's how it could be better maybe, but in not so simple terms, because I like to bury things under many layers of abstraction. Yeah. N2 is looking, and
N2 is looking in, and N3 is?
N3 is glaring outwards.
We should say something about our friends at Everlasting Spew who sent the album to me, and this is your first album for them, right?
Yep.
How did they get involved with this?
So with the first record, we put that thing out And I remember Tito from Everlasting Spew kind of reaching out to me and being really stoked on it, and, you know, kind of letting us know that he'd love to work with us in the future.
Yeah, they were one of the first people to like really support N1, because we self-released that as a band that had no prior, like we just came out of nowhere. We were like, let's record a full-length album and then just release it.
And John with the Void Rock guys, they were already working with Everlasting Spew, and so they had a lot of good things to say about those guys. And with N1, you know, like just kind of putting it out and having no label and not really like expecting one. We didn't expect anything, honestly. We just made a record and wanted to put it out.
We wanted to make music, and so we did.
Yeah, and that's still the case. But with N2, we kind of wanted to hammer down like, okay, who's gonna put it out, and when, you know, early in the process, so we could just have that locked down. And Spew seemed like a no-brainer, because those guys rule. They have great taste in music. They understand what we're going for. And they have like Alters is one of the best bands ever for me. And so if I was like, if Alters is on that label, then yeah, of fucking course we could be on there, because yeah, that's the best shit ever. So it's an honor to work with Tito and Giorgio and be on the same label as so many dope ass bands.
So Supraliminal will be out on the 20th of January through Everlasting Spew Records. Alan, Clay, how can people get the album? What's the best way?
You got it on Spotify. It'll drop fully on Spotify on January 20th on all the major streaming platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube Music. Bandcamp is always my favorite way to get stuff. It'll be up on Bandcamp. You can order the record and it'll come with a digital copy of it as well. Yeah, we'll be posting about it on our Facebook, Nothingness, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'm sure Everlasting Spew will be posting it. But yeah, all the major streaming platforms and Bandcamp, basically.
Yeah, specifically, so Everlasting Spew records.bandcamp.com/Supraliminal. And then that's where you can order all of the sort of like ordering the physical record will go through Everlasting Spew. And then otherwise they're sending us physicals that we will be selling at shows exclusively.
Yep. Through that link Clay just said, you can also order shirts, and we got tapes, CDs. We'll have vinyl spring 2023. So this spring. Yeah. Otherwise, just, you know, look it up on YouTube. It'll pop up. You can let it rip there if you want to.
Do you want to say anything about the physical versions that Everlasting Spew is creating for this?
We got sweet orange tapes. Some, I don't know if the CDs are orange, but that would be cool. There's orange on the CD for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that the CDs are like printed with the part of the album cover. So you have like that melting orange, yellow, red sort of look.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Giorgio and Tito sent us a number of proofs throughout the thing, and it all turned out like just really cool. The whole booklet that they sent over, they're like, hey, check it out. We did the layout and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that's sick as fuck.
Yeah, they killed it with all the physical layouts and the styling and colors and whatnot that they picked for the different parts of it.
Yeah, I say we wanted the record to be loud and then to obviously look loud. And so the art that we chose is loud, and then they nailed it by, you know, putting the orange shells on the tapes and everything else that kind of goes with that. So now we're just excited to work with them, and it's been a really nice combo.
And you mentioned your Instagram and Facebook pages. Are you Nothingness MN on both those?
Nope.
Yep.
No, we're not.
Oh,
on Instagram, it's Nothingness_is_death.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep. And then we're just
I get my head.
And then everywhere else, like if you ever really wanted to email us, it's nothingnessmn@gmail, and then nothingnessmn@Facebook. So most of our stuff is nothingnessmn, but then on Instagram we're is death.
And Facebook and Instagram are the two best places to follow what you guys do and keep up to date with tour news and stuff like that.
Yep.
I think Instagram would probably be the best, because we post like random story videos on there, but I think they actually might go to Facebook now too. So yeah, either one, Facebook or Instagram, we'll kind of be populating those with all of our updates, you know, what we got going on, where we're playing shows, and when you can expect physicals to release, etc.
Very cool. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
I'd like to thank you for taking time to talk to us.
Yeah, same here. Appreciate it. It's fun to talk about this stuff, and it's rad that you took your time out of your day to talk to us about our dumb stinking record. And thank you.
Trust me, guys. There aren't
Yeah.
there aren't that many people I can speak about death metal to. It was a pleasure for me as well.
Hell yeah.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, you too, man.
Appreciate it.